The Bamako residence of President Ibrahim Boubacar Keita, secure and heavily guarded, but instead of keeping people out, these soldiers were keeping him in. He and Prime Minister Boubou Cissé were detained here on Tuesday. Confusion prevailed all day with no explanation by the military or government until President Keita appeared on state television announcing his resignation.
I want no blood to be spilled to keep me in power, and that's why I would like to thank the Malian people for their warmth. I am telling you now that I'm resigning from my position as the president and all my other positions, and I announce the dissolution of the assembly and the government.
West African bloc ECOWAS responded forcefully to the coup, isolating Mali through border closures, suspending financial flows and called for sanctions against coup organisers and their supporters. But many Malians welcomed the coup. As word spread of a mutiny, crowds frustrated with the president and his government spurred the soldiers on. Some ransacked and burned government offices.
We have come out today to call for the total resignation of President Keita because we heard there were shots fired by the military, and we've come out to help our soldiers get rid of the president.
We are tired. The country is paralysed, and I do not want this government.
The soldiers began their mutiny at a base on the outskirts of Bamako, the same base that saw a 2012 army uprising that opened the way to Keita's presidency. Heavily armed troops were later seen escorting a vehicle believed to be carrying the president.
We're very happy because this is a liberation for the people of Mali. All of Mali's people were waiting for this day. All of Mali's people were waiting for the president and his men to allow us to breathe.
President Keita has faced weeks of opposition protests calling for his departure after disputed parliamentary elections earlier this year. Swaths of the country are already outside the control of the government that struggled to contain an armed insurgency that's claimed thousands of lives. Now the military has forced President Keita to step down. It's unclear what their plan is for Mali and its leadership. Charlotte Bellis, Al Jazeera.
The coup has sparked widespread international condemnation. The African Union has emphatically condemned the arrests. The European Union says it's rejecting all unconstitutional change in the country and is calling for dialogue. The office of the French President Emmanuel Macron was quick to react and is urging soldiers to return to barracks. The UN Security Council is to hold an emergency meeting on Wednesday. Let's join William Lawrence, an expert on North Africa and a professor of political science at the American University in Washington, D.C. Good to have you with us again on the programme, sir. The situation very fluid, and one wonders what the fate of the president might be under the guard of disgruntled soldiers.
Well, this was very confusing today because it started what seemed to be as a mutiny against lack of pay to the military. And the next thing we knew, the military had not only taken over that base, but they had descended on Bamako, arrested the president, prime minister around 4:30 p.m., and then proceeded to arrest a bunch of other officials, including those that would be involved in the constitutional succession. I took a look at the Malian constitution this evening to be sure, and there's really no one to succeed. There's been no military announcement in terms of who's in charge or what they want. So some Malian commentators have been saying, we have no president, we have no parliament, we have nothing.
It is a very strange situation. Military coups are, of course, no stranger to Mali, but Keita was able to quell discontent amongst the military when he first came to power in 2013 and sort of unify generally a fractured economy and a society that needed guidance. What went wrong?
Well, his tenure grew out of the last coup at the same military base in 2012. And so in many ways, he was the replacement power that was supposed to fix Mali's problems. But they have three overlapping sets of problems. There's a severe political crisis that grew out of the botched March 2020 elections. There's a severe economic crisis complicated by COVID-19. And there's a severe security crisis, which has led to the arrest of one of the major opposition leaders held by terrorists in the north, and lots of grievances, both about the failure to contain terrorism, but also the actions of the military against civilians to, overreactions to in terms of terrorism. And so there's a lot of discontent. And like so many similar protests like in Algeria or Sudan, where the protests came together with a consensus of what was wrong and brought down a president, what we'll quickly see is that there's not very much consensus about what to do next and who should represent most Malians. Even the best-known leader of the opposition, Diko, is a controversial figure among many Malians. So there's a lack of leadership at the top right now.
And of course, while that confusion remains, I mean, let's just focus in on the insurgency in the north of the country, primarily tackling armed groups like Al-Qaeda and ISIL. How much of a problem has this been for the president? He really hasn't been able to get a handle on it.
Absolutely. It's a problem that's gotten steadily worse over the last 4 or 5 years, with by some estimates, 4 or 5 or 10-fold increase in deaths caused by terrorism. The problem for Mali has bled into Burkina and Niger next door, and it's become a regional issue, which has to do with these border closures and other condemnations that are going on. And there's both dissatisfaction among those that want terrorism to be harder and those who want to make peace with certain terrorist groups like the Diko, the leader who I mentioned, who wants dialogue with the jihadists up north. And so there's a real frustration with this worsening problem leading to more violence, which is also mixing with ethnic violence, but no consensus on how to best handle it, whether it needs a harder approach or a softer approach.
William Lawrence, it's always good to get your insight. Thanks very much for joining us from Washington, D.C. Thank you.